Cult of Luna is a band that a couple of years ago I received a lot of requests for. It was for their last album that they did with Julie Christmas, which was entitled Mariner. I unfortunately did not have the opportunity to review it. It is something that I, in fact, regret because I do feel that it would have shifted up the list, the top albums of the year list for that year. It is an excellent release, but I'm going to right the wrong by talking about their brand new album today, which is entitled A Dawn to Fear. I don't want to make the same mistake twice, especially with only one chance left. And this post-metal band is one that shares a lot of great contemporaries, from names such as Neurosis to even having moments that may venture more into post-rock territory while still maintaining that metallic edge. And what gives this band such a leg up and what has really helped to shape their reputation to what it is today is their beautiful juxtapositions between heavy and light, which is something that we talk about a lot whenever we do these reviews, considering it is something that does give some of these albums and some of this music that we love within the heavy metal universe a real sense of dynamisty. And A Dawn to Fear is no different, and it's something that you note most immediately within the long song run times. You know that there has to be a lot that goes on, and any experienced veteran of Cult of Luna understands that this is a cornerstone of what they are all about. So what does A Dawn to Fear bring to the table that is necessarily all of that different from what they've done in the past? And the answer to that question is just a logical progression of their sound, continuing to build and continuing to add little tweaks to their formula in order to craft something that has a different feeling and atmosphere to it, something that does craft and create a certain element of anger or of sorrow. That emotional capacity that they're able to drive just continues to become a growing asset for them within their construction. And you get that right away with The Silent Man that starts this off. It's a 10.5-minute long opener, and first of all, the luscious atmosphere that you're going to get from this song, which is once again juxtaposed with sort of the chaos that is embedded within it, is something that will immediately give listeners a lot to sort of digest, especially if this is your first experience with this band. Experienced veterans know exactly what to expect. However, somebody who might be new to the fold, who might be scoping out this band for the first time, or this genre for the very first time, will be pleasantly surprised in what they get. That they're going to get that sort of rite of passage where both sides are really displayed and evident. I like the way that this song really brings you into the fold, not to mention feels like an adequate opener for an album of such a name as A Dawn to Fear, which whenever I think of that name and hear that name, immediately makes me think about waking up on a dawn of war. Either that or waking up to a world that is very markedly changed from how it was in the past. That any sort of good, positive sentiment is no longer present. We now live in a literal wasteland. And whenever you hear Lay Your Head to Rest and A Dawn to Fear, the title track, both of these feel like they have a little bit of credence to it. It does continue with a themology that may only be loose, but feels like, even from just the song title perspective, is very bold and very brazen. And again, these really rough riffs that are sort of carried over by these extremely harsh vocals that then draw out into that post-rock and post-metal bliss, that sort of calming, airy, very atmospheric construction, are what give Cult of Luna a real sense of purpose and belonging in a genre that has become littered with bands that are very much like them. They themselves are, a second or third wave group, but they do feel like that they are sort of leading the current charge and are becoming sort of the new standard in this genre, at least in the post-metal department. This isn't black gaze. There's a little bit of a difference there, but still that aggression is something that juxtaposes so very nicely with the calm that it does craft a willing and creative atmosphere. And then whenever you get into Nightwalkers, you get right back into nearly 11-minute long territory, but Lights on the Hill is perhaps one of the most beautiful but then also chaotic tracks. It's one that embodies a ton of emotion, and its 15-minute runtime, it absolutely should. So this is exactly what you want to do with your 15-minute long mammoth track that is right in the middle of your album. It does have a very long build. It is something that takes about 5 to 6 minutes in order to get to its opening stanzas, but this is all 100% well designed, considering that build continues to craft tension while also easing you in to what you're about to experience. And the riffs on this are really what make it stand apart from perhaps any other song on this album. There's a lot of things on here, little subtle nuances, little ways in which the notes are structured within the construction that give it a almost catchy vibe, or something that immediately your ears are very pleased with, something that you enjoy. It feels very natural. It's not trying to be purposefully dissonant or try to reinvent the wheel. They are going with things that are sort of battle-tested and approved by bands of the past, including themselves. However, by using this and using it in the atmosphere that they have created, especially with the tracks such as Lights on the Hill, they have been able to build something more than just atmosphere. They've also been able to build emotion. You will feel crescendo and peak. You will feel your emotion change. You will swell with different ideas or different feelings as you go about this song. And its changeover at about the 10 and 10 and a half minute mark for its 4-minute finale certainly gives and lends very well to what this song's overall meaning and craft is all about. Moving on to the latter portions of the second half of this album, Inland Rain and We Feel the End both once again seem to support the themology of this album exceptionally well, from both a lyrical as well as a constructive perspective. And with that in mind, Cult of Luna again feels like they are crafting more of an experience rather than just an album. Their music is taking on the scope of both cinema as well as heavy metal. And very similar to an album, albums from bands such as Neurosis, you can almost imagine scenarios in your head. You can almost imagine the film that this music could be the score of. And that sort of creativity and the way in which you're able to use your imagination in that regard is what gives Cult of Luna that sort of instantaneous appeal, that way in which you can allow yourself to run wild with the overall notion and dedicate your own story to it. So even if it's just themology, it just has a themology to it that sort of binds everything together, but not a concrete story, you can actually supply the story, and the music is going to, suffice with that very well and merge with it very nicely to give that full experience. Now, with an album such like this, you need to have a great closer, and I say that so often about so many albums. You want something that's instantly memorable as your finale, and The Fall starts off not really having that connection initially. However, as it continues and as that build develops, you notice that it does become a very worthy finishing track. It's something where Lights on the Hill may have even been a better place to conclude, but I also really like its spot based on its positioning right after Nightwalkers and right before We Feel the End. It's something where those three tracks, that trilogy, works very well off of one another in order to really build a nice sense of purpose. Not to mention, it keeps the flow of the album going. The Fall does seem to have a very natural conclusion. There is a little bit of changeover, there is heaviness, but there's also a lot of air and open space in order to give this a real different feel compared to some of its predecessors. So each track, while it does maintain stylistic integrity, each track does feel individual, which is something that helps. You want to make sure that your album is dynamic, but also can stand well enough on its own track to track. The Fall definitely does this, and in its 13-minute runtime serves as a fitting conclusion for an album that feels a lot bigger than it actually is. What really comes to mind whenever I listen to this, whenever it comes to the sort of flow of the atmosphere, the emotion and all of that, is last year's Oceans of Slumber album. The way in which that album felt like it was very self-contained, but also was extremely unique. It gave a lot to the listener without necessarily having to tread too much new ground in order to do so. It was able to maintain itself and stay within its philosophy and stuck to its guns. I feel that that's what's happened here with A Dawn to Fear. It's a brilliant little piece of music that gives a lot to the listener without necessarily having to completely and totally reinvent the Cult of Luna wheel. It's not something that needs just 100% aggression in order to get its message across. It's instead learning some of the lessons from the experimentation and collaboration with Julie Christmas in order to build something that has a lot of depth, which they already had a lot of depth, so adding more depth to depth, it's a lot of depth. And I like that. I like the fact that this feels like it registers on various different wavelengths. I feel like it's an album that takes the approach of a band such as The Ocean and goes one step further with it and is able to build even more dynamisty, and it's able to do so both musically and lyrically. That combination gives it a lot of punch, and that combination is why Cult of Luna continues to this day to feel like a very prominent part of the post-metal scene. And as a result, this is a 28 out of 30. This is an exceptionally strong album, one whose building blocks and basic foundations are really serving them very well and crafting a terrific piece of music, a terrific set of songs that just feel like they have such a bold and brazen image, and one that's able to use the music in order to cause that setting to morph and change. And based off of that, Cult of Luna has another just smash hit, I think, on their hands. I think that Mariner took a lot of people by surprise because of the collaboration and how well that worked out. I think that A Dawn to Fear works in a more traditional way, where fans that are very familiar with Cult of Luna will know exactly what to expect, but also feel very pleased with what they have delivered for them. But I want to know what you think about A Dawn to Fear by Cult of Luna. Please let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that little bell so you know every single time a Cover Killer Nation video is live here in these last couple of months. I'm Cover Killer Nation, guy I just talked about, me. I'll talk to you guys next time. Take care.